In this video, we will explore namespaces, function parameters, and returns. Recall that all functions have returns, and many functions can take different parameters as input. Also recall that functions have things called namespaces in which they store all of their variables. The code used in this video will be available for you online. Because of the statement on line 17, we first execute main. When we start executing a function, we open up a namespace for that function. We record the name of the calling function in the namespace, as well as any parameters that were given when the function was called. As main was called completely outside of any functions, it does not have a calling function. Right now, main has no variables in this namespace since it has no parameters. We proceed to execute the lines of code in main. The first line prints main to the screen. Once this has happened, the print function returns. In the case of the print function returns none, which is the default return value for all functions in Python. Remember, all functions return, but we may not care about the value that is returned. In particular, we do not care about the return from the print function because we mainly like this function for its side effects, namely printing to the screen. Moving on, the next statement assigns n the value of 1. As you can see, in main's namespace, we create a new variable n and assign it the value 1. We then move on to the next line. In this line, a is assigned the value returned by the function call foo, given the parameter n. We first get the value of n, which at this time is 1. We then pass the value of n to foo as a parameter. Note that we have opened a new namespace for foo, and the namespace for main is, for now, out of our vision. We cannot see any of the variables that were created in main. In foo, we can see that because of the function definition, or we want to call the value that was passed in as a parameter n. So in foo's namespace, we now have a variable n that has been assigned the value passed in to the function. On the first line, we set that value to itself times 2. In order to do this, we first access the current value of the variable n in memory, multiply that by 2, and then assign that value to n. On the next line, we print n. After printing, there are no further lines to execute. We therefore return. However, we did not have an explicit return. Therefore, the return value from foo is the default return value, or none. And a is assigned the value none in main's namespace. On the next line, we call bar given the input n. In this case, we can see that we access the value in main's namespace, getting 1 as the value. We pass it through to bar's namespace, and this time we can see in the function definition that we would like to call that value by the variable name x. We therefore assign the variable x the value that was passed in from main. We then set x equal to x plus 2 and return x. Note that when we hit a return, we simply return from the function. Therefore, no statements that are below a return statement are ever executed. When we reach main, we set b to the returned value from bar, in this case 3. We then print A and B to the screen. After this, there are no further lines to execute in main, and because there is no function that is called main, we return.